forms. I saw an article the other day of they had a lot of assistance to teachers because they just needed people to help file and doing all this work. But the teachers have all these jobs to do. Sort of what happened in medicine, too. Some doctors' offices now have 3 people just filling out forms. You know, and then they wonder why the cost of medicine goes up. But it's all government bureaucracy that's involved. But I think the less federal government, that means more money would stay in the states, and there'd be probably more money into education, but it would depend. Some states would do a better job than others. But if you have the federal government doing it, and you pass national laws, and you have no child left behind, then it's damaging to everybody across the board.
We have time for one more question.
Okay.
And then we'll go. And
we got to go.
If any questions in particular, that'd be fine. So one more question, please.
Here we go.
I just have a personal question for you. I worked in a congressional office this summer, and I saw the kind of information that went in and out of there, and what the interpretation of what they got is very different from what you have, and I want to know, where do you get your information from, and how can we get other people to get that same information?
The information you were seeing was coming from constituents and asking questions, and you mean the answers that were given and that sort of thing, and my approach was different.
The media that they chose to.
It's not going to be easy. I try to have an influence on that in a very subtle way. I have a meeting every week with other members of Congress. I have lunch with them, and I invite speakers that come in that would share these views, and I might get 6 members, I might get 12 members, and we go over foreign policy and monetary policy, and just slowly and subtly it's trying to introduce them to different views that they don't get exposed to in regular college courses. And the real answer to that is probably educating a new generation of people like you who will either be campaigning for certain individuals or working for certain individuals or becoming candidates yourself that have a different viewpoint on the government, what the role of government ought to be. But this is where I see the most encouragement. I started doing this in the 70s, more out of a lark than anything else, and didn't think much would come of it. And there weren't very many people at all in Washington or outside of Washington that really cared or knew much about it. But there are a lot of organizations, a lot of books, and a lot of stuff on the Internet, and a lot of think tanks that are real pro-liberty now, explaining these issues in an economic and a moral way and concentrating on the Constitution. So the field is very fertile, and I think this is being reflected in the campaign. It's not because of me. It's the fact that these views have been mentioned and they've heard about it. So I think there's a lot happening in your generation, even though you might say, well, we're just a small number. Most people on campus don't even care, which may be true. But it at least takes a small number of people of active activists to make a difference, and I think that's what's happening. So there's no magic to it, and it's not going to happen quickly. And sometimes it's a generational thing. And but I would tell you one thing. In the last 8 months since I've been doing this, and I truthfully say I was very reluctant to do this because I was skeptical. I didn't think anybody cared, and there weren't enough people, and young people wouldn't, join, and all these things. But believe me, there are a lot of people who have just been quiet and not talking about it. But young people like you are very receptive to it, and one gentleman just told me he'd been following this for 5 years. So you've been exposed and know about it, and it's much better than it was when I was when I was in school in the 50s, because I searched and searched because I wanted to find the truth, but it wasn't readily available. All I got was this same old stuff, either from the universities or from the media and the government, over and over again, and something they can do. The most important thing is become well-informed and learn and understand and trust liberty to find answers in our traditions and our Constitution. There's so many answers there. Not perfect ones, but to build on them. I don't want to go back to the original Constitution. The Constitution deserves to be changed, but we shouldn't ignore it. That is it. But there's every reason to be optimistic that these changes can come about. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Okay.
Well, it's very close.
That'll be mine. Okay, I want to take a sip of water.
Would you rather sit or stand? Would you rather stand or sit?
Just like stand. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
look at me. Congressman, there is such internet support for you, this groundswell ahead of all your other Republican colleagues. Why you and why the internet? And what is that about, specifically about your message that works well on the net?
I don't know if I know the entire answer for that, but obviously the young people, especially who are using the internet, are very receptive to the views of personal liberty. I think it's natural for young people to like to be left alone. And I think there are concerns that they're worried about. And if the answers can be found in liberty, they want to know about them, accept them, and we've really struck a chord with them. And the message is spreading with like leaps and bounds. It used to be that you'd have to spend millions and millions of dollars to reach as many people as the internet reaches. So we're very excited about it, but we don't have a full explanation other than the fact that the ideas of liberty are very popular, especially with young people.
And if somebody out there who maybe doesn't know Congressman Ron Paul, what is your basic message, in short and sweet?
Well, the most important message is we should follow the rule of law, and to me that's the Constitution. We all take an oath to follow it, and it's a good Constitution that's been ignored for a good many decades. We go to war without declaring it. We have a monetary system which is not authorized. We have an economic system which is not free enterprise anymore. And my message is return to the rule of law, return to the Constitution, and emphasize personal liberty and personal responsibility. Depending on other people for your well-being really doesn't work. And it tends to bankrupt the country, and I think people are starting to realize that. So it's a message of freedom, independence, and self-reliance.
Part of that message that strikes the biggest chord is your take on what's happening in the war in Iraq. It's called an illegal war. But now we've seen what's happened with General Petraeus. We've also seen some reluctance on the part of Republican senators at this point to do anything differently. What would you urge your colleagues that do this?
They can be involved in education, they can be involved in political campaigns, they can run for office, all sorts of things. But if this is a viable message and a viable campaign, I think it'll continue. Somebody will pick up the pieces and there'll be another candidate. I don't think we're going to die on the vine. I think that this message is strong enough and necessary enough that it will continue as a very viable force.
You having fun, and it's been great?
It's been great. It's been enlightening, mainly because of the young people joining.
All right. Thank you so much, Congressman.
Very good.
Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
This is Kaylin. She's with the Underwritten Institute of Politics, and she told me to put it on.
Okay.
I can actually help you. I'm sure you know how to do it.
Something like
a little bit too high. You kind of sound like a
okay.
Too much.
Very good.
So she's going to have about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Test.
You speak a lot about kind of focusing back on America and that our foreign policy is sort of off track. I was just wondering. I was just wondering how you feel about with economic, political, social, and cultural globalization that is going on. Is it a very realistic or possible goal to be able to completely turn inward like that?
I don't want to turn inward. Some people who would like to discredit my policies, especially on foreign policy, is they like to label it isolationist and turning inwards. It's really the opposite. I follow the Constitution as well as the admonition of the founders, and they did not want to turn inward at all. They believed in trade. They wanted free trade. They wanted travel, and they wanted friendship. They just didn't want to get involved militarily in the internal affairs of other nations, and they didn't want to be the policeman. And bringing weapons home and bringing troops home doesn't mean that we're withdrawing. If you're a true isolationist and somebody that believes in mercantilism, that's quite different. You have high tariffs and you don't want to trade and this sort of thing. That is not my position. They were convinced that if we traded with countries, we'd be less likely to fight with them, and I firmly believe that.
That's great. And going along with that, there was a couple of months back during the Democratic debates, they were talking about whether or not if you were to win the actual presidency, would you be willing to sit down with some of the leaders that are harshest, that have the harshest relations with the United States? Would you be